Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, a show that celebrates all things nerdy. You'll get an insider's look into the world of comic books, graphic novels, TV and film, gaming and pop culture, as well as the technologies that drive all of it. Now, are you ready to get nerdy? Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, the show about all things nerdy. We discuss nerd news, movies, TV shows, games, comics, and so much more. I'm Brian.
I'm Chad.
Embrace yourselves, folks, because we're about to get nerdy. All right, folks, before we jump into this episode, I want to take just a brief moment to say thank you to our wonderful host of a network. The Rising Tide Broadcast Network is, there we go, Chad's wonderful Vanna White creepy hands. Every day of the week, folks, we have shows that range from shows about watches, shows about drinking, shows about comic books, shows about being a creative, shows about being in a community with creatives, and so on and so forth. It is a blast, and we have enough to keep you entertained Monday through Sunday. And on top of that, Chad, you crazy weirdo, you have some new glasses that you're sharing with all of us this morning. Why don't you tell us a little bit about getting old?
Of course, you want to put me on the spot like that. Well,
yeah, I'd love to.
I will just say this, that these glasses are affectionately referred to as the Clark Kent version of me by my wife. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
So you're even more of a bumble. I love it. It's wonderful.
Yes. Other than the fact that, yes, I've officially joined the old age club, or entered into old age, because I do have progressive lenses on, which is basically bifocals without a line. So yes, I am old. Yeah. And I could tell because it started when I started like drawing. Like I'd look at something and I look down to draw and it would take a minute to focus. And sometimes if I look at something, I'd start to have to do one of these things.
Yeah.
And then I realized, it's about that time. So
yeah, well, I got to tell you, they look really good on you, really, and that's the only compliment you're getting from me today.
Well,
so, folks, you're not here to hear about Chad. Nobody cares about Chad, right? We're all here for one man, and that one man is the one, the only Clyde Hall. Yes, everybody. Woohoo!
Clyde! Everybody's going back to Chad, because no, we know this guy.
Not at all. Nobody gives a crap about Chad. So no, we love Chad, or at least we have to say that for legal reasons. Right. Clyde, now I'm going to give you the full screen, my friend, and you tell us just a little bit of who you are, and yes, we're going to a little bit who you are and where we can find all of your stuff. It's a nice little intro for yourself.
Okay.
Go for it.
I was brought across in 1228. I'm human for their blood. Now I want to be mortal again, to repay society for my sins, to emerge from this world of darkness, from my endless, forever night. Actually, I'm Clyde Hall, and I am an independent author, and apologies to Jerry Edwin Davies for making off with his opening for the Forever Night TV show, but that kind of sets the tone for being a monster kid of the 60s, being a comic book fan, being an elder statesman of geekery. I have had the progressive lenses, Chad, for almost 20 years now, so, I'm excited to be here, but I'm also excited when I get a new pair of orthopedic socks. So, this is what you guys have to look forward to. Elder statesman of geekery, a graduate from the 1960s schools of everything cool in pop culture. So you can find me every Thursday night on YouTube and on Facebook. We have Comic Book Spectrum, where I do a review with other people like Brian Morris and who's the guy with the Batman hat? Oh, Brian Rodman, yeah. And Eric Davis. And Eric Hawkins. And we all get together and we talk about all of the things that we have seen in the last 30 days that excite us as far as new comic books. I am also a contributing writer at Stormgate Press. We do new pulp, along with some other genres, but new pulp is what I do, and I got published last year with Pulp Reality #1. It's an award. Whoop! I can't navigate here. It is. There we go. It is a winner of the 2021 Pulp Factory Award. So I'm proud to be part of the creative team that won an award with Pulp Reality. In these issues, which are available from www.stormgatepress.com or on Amazon, I introduced a character called B-Man. And he is a pulp hero from the 1960s who finds that he has the ability to become any character from the B movies that have played at an old-time theater in his neighborhood. So the B-Man Chronicles continue in the upcoming Pulp Reality #3, and I have been asked to contribute to a 4th issue, which should tie up very nicely the story arc that I've been working on for B-Man. But if you go to www.stormgatepress.com, you will see all kinds of new pulp, horror, and other genres written by folks like Bobby Nash, Brian K. Morris, and Charles F. Milhouse. So go there, look up Pulp Reality, see all the other things that they offer, and you can keep track of me there. Also on Facebook under Clyde Hall and Radiating Positive Vibes with author Clyde Hall. And you can find me on Twitter at CJ Hall 1984.
Awesome. That is great. Well, Clyde, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you.
And before we make you an honorary dingo, let's jump into some comments because we've got quite a few people ready to talk to you. Carl Witzman says that he hates us all and wishes we would all burn in a fire. And he is not here with us now. He said that he'll check back in later. We love you, Carl. I'm just messing with you.
His interview must not have gone well with the show.
Yeah. Hello, Ted Davies.
Hello,
he says, good morning.
Ted.
How are you, my fine, fine sir? And Sarah just hopped on from one Dastardly Dingoes with BKM and rushed to this one.
Nice.
Oh, boy. And there he is. Speak of the devil. Greetings, one and all. Hello, sir. Hello, hello, hello. And everybody's saying hello to each other. Look at that. Wonderful.
I have a special
let's see.
co-host today.
Oh, look at the little doggy.
Little puppy. Little puppy.
Look at him. Luna's sleeping in her room, so I don't have. What's his name? Yeah.
It's a girl. It's Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Little Jupiter.
Oh,
very sweet.
She's in here with me today just for a while. So if you hear some barking, that's her.
Don't blame your farts on the dog, Chad.
Yeah.
That's not nice. Brian said Brian has the job about talking us up while Chad gets to do the
What?
What is happening? Okay. Well, we're gonna move on to the next one. Yeah, I know.
Do you have the
Brian
mature topic label that we can put up here like we do on our
I
show?
know, I don't have that. No.
Oh no.
Oh man. So let's see. Oh, and now Clyde's here. So now we have to behave, everybody.
Like I'm the hall monitor for the show or something.
Yeah, I know, right? And Brian says, "Oh, the puppy! Look
the
at
puppies!
It.
Yes.
All right. Well, Clyde, sir, I am so happy we finally get to do this, sir. You are now knighted as an honorary dingo. Yes, hold the sword up high. Indeed. Now, to prove your worth, your first mission, should you choose to accept it, is to tell us your top 5 spooky movies of all time.
Top 5 horror movies.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I gotta say, and some of these are going to be coming. Okay, first of all, I don't like the best of because that changes sometimes within minutes.
Well, for right now, where you're sitting.
Right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to exclude the Universal because they are such a tier above. It would be hard to. You could just 5 Universal movies, boom.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the ones that either meant something to me as a kid or I've watched a lot as a grown-up. And the first one is The Night Stalker. Darren McGavin. It was a TV movie of all things. But back then, early 70s, Trilogy of Terror, Night Stalker, Duel. There was some really Gargoyles, not the animated show,
Yeah.
but a live action show. There were some really good movies of the week that were tackling horror. And the Night Stalker was about Darren McGavin playing investigative reporter Carl Kolchak, a guy that had come up through the ranks of journalists when they were hard drinking, hard smoking, no nonsense. They lived in the real world. Well, he was in Las Vegas, and there's a vampire, somebody that thinks he's a vampire on the loose, until Kolchak decides the guy doesn't just think he's a vampire, he is a vampire. And it had one of the scariest climactic scenes of any movie I saw as a kid. Just the kind of thing where you, if you'd had a drink in your hand, you'd have dropped it.
Yeah.
So it is, and it has aged. It is a product of its time, but it'll still give you chills. So,
yeah, I've only ever seen clips of that. Actually, I don't think I've seen a full episode all the way through.
They made a second movie, The Night Stalker. And they made a TV show, but watch just the Night Stalker movie.
Okay.
It is the best of all those. Although the show was nice, it had a Monster of the Week kind of a format.
Yeah.
But the Night Stalker itself was, well, in fact, when it did so well here that they released it in the theaters in Europe because it made a lot of money. So Dan Curtis, that had done Dark Shadows, was the force behind it, and it was so different than a soap opera. It was just really good. Nightbreed. A lot of people, Hellraiser is a big movie for them, but I liked Nightbreed.
Nightbreed, yes.
Yeah. Decker is one of the scariest screen villains ever.
Yeah.
And played by
he was the director. Yeah, that was the crazy part. Yeah. I have you ever watched the director's cut?
Yes.
And it's far superior because the studio chopped it up.
Yeah.
But have you ever read? Chad doesn't like horror.
Clyde, here's a little context here. I don't ever watch scary movies. I don't like them. My mind goes too crazy, so I just don't watch them. So this conversation that you and Brian are having is basically like me trying to join in a conversation about sports, because I don't follow sports either. And I did for a long time. If someone got into a conversation about sports and they didn't really know me, I tried to act like I was a big fan of sports and try to convince them that I actually love sports.
Oh, yeah.
So I may do that to you guys. Unfortunately, I've kind of given myself away here.
Yeah. Well, we'll pretend like that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that that you're the biggest horror buff of all, and you are actually just judging us. How's that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm already judging you, so that's fine.
I know that. Yeah, no, have you read the short story that inspired Nightbreed?
No.
It started off as a short. I think it was Cabal. I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
And I've heard it's fantastic. Stephanie Menard, who's a friend of the network, and has been on the show before. I'm pretty sure she's read it, and she said it was fantastic. So I trust her. But that's a great choice. Do you like a lot of Clive Barker's stuff?
I did like Hellraiser, but the puzzle box was interesting and everything, but it did not hit me as hard as Nightbreed is about people that are outsiders and outcasts and underdogs. I love underdog stories, and I think that's maybe what got me with this. Plus, the Decker villain is just so creepy, and he's not a monster technically.
No.
I love that everything on its head turned everything upside down. In fact, it's sort of like the tribes of the moon represent the old style of the mythic kind of creatures of the night. He's a slasher. He's a Michael Myers.
Yeah.
He's a wannabe. I love the way that played out, especially for the time that it came out. It felt so fresh. So, but I've watched it a lot since then, and it holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I watched it for the first time a couple years ago, and I really enjoyed it. And actually, I got they have a comic series
Mhm.
that's I don't know if it is I think it's a companion piece. I haven't read it. I bought it. It's on Comixology. Have you read it, Clyde?
I have read a couple of issues a long time when it first came out. I read it.
Uh-huh.
So I can't really. We did a role play game that somebody adapted for Nightbreed, where we each could play members of the tribes of the moon, and
Ooh.
he had drawn some of the story information from that. Is why I've read some of the comics. So, a long time ago, yes, I really couldn't tell you much about it now, but.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm about to start it here soon, so I'll probably talk about it on Comic Book Spectrum.
Cool. Yeah,
All right.
that'd be
So
great.
that's 2. What's 3?
Count Yorga Vampire.
I have
Mm,
never heard of that
that's
before.
one of my favorites.
Oh, here, Brian doesn't know anything about it. Yeah, that's my pick
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Mhm. Brian, you've
Um,
never seen that? What's wrong with you?
No, apparently I'm a loser.
no,
So,
it's
Well,
really. It was kind of where they tried to do a Hammer version in America with. It had a lot of sensuality. No,
yes.
no real nudity, but there was a certain sensual tone to the vampires. Robert Quarry, I believe, was the actor that played Count Yorga, but it was pure grindhouse horror movie that you could go. They had it played at Halloween time at our theater when I was a little kid, and it had those scenes where everything just goes suddenly. There's a horrific thing in slow motion coming for you. The vampire at one point is just doing that. It's sort of like an EC comic come to life in certain scenes.
oh, that's fun.
Oh yeah, and I have watched it more recently. It does not hold. It's a very '70s film. It does not hold up grandly, but as a kid, that was the scariest vampire movie. There was no, he was very suave and everything. It was definitely the '70s. You had the Flower Children movement, and they did a sequel, and it was equally creepy. Um, but it was for vampires and being a young person. You have vampires along with a sensual tone to it. It really worked at that time. Um, The next one set a trend for the 80s, starting in '78, that, Halloween the original. We're
Oh
still
gosh.
we're still looking at
Yes.
Halloween today, the Halloween
Yes.
kills. So, and I can't help it. I know people that really, really love that really love Freddy, and they love
Yeah.
Jason, but really, you know, Halloween began it. Halloween, I think, did it more effectively than most of the others.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
Especially
whole
the first one, because the first one was all it was all mood. It was
yes,
all tone.
mhm,
And it was, I mean, yeah, there was, your stereotypical slasher stuff, but it didn't focus on that. It focused on the boogeyman. It
mhm,
focused on this spooky figure in the background who is hunting everybody down, and it didn't necessarily focus on the tropes that became the slasher film tropes, like the all the sex, all the
mhm.
all the drugs, and the especially the over the top gore. None of that was in the first Halloween movie. It was all about. It was almost like John Carpenter was just trying to make a slasher Universal monster movie, almost.
There is
Um,
quite a bit of sex in it. Let's be honest.
well, there's a little bit, but I mean,
Not
compared to
as
the Friday the 13th movies, you know what I
right,
mean? Yeah, like
right.
yeah.
That's true. But that was definitely a tone. I've never been in a theater where everybody was sitting there at the beginning as the lights went down and that pumpkin is shown, and then it says, I think it starts off, Haddonfield, Illinois, and we're in a
Mhm.
theater in Illinois. And as soon as the Illinois
Yeah.
part came up, everybody this theater is packed. Everybody just goes, ooh. Just grabbed you right from the start with that. But you've got a guy that was burned to death as a child molester, and he is now the gateway of dreams. Okay, the gatekeeper of dreams. You got a guy who was killed in a summer camp accident because the counselors were too busy having sex with each other, and now he's a vengeful revenant thing. Okay, Michael Myers
Yeah.
he is Salwin. He is the embodiment he's transcended into something that is not quite describable like the others. Like the way I like him, at least. The Rob Zombie versions were okay, but he tried to humanize him a lot.
A lot,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think even the new, because I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan of the new movies. I saw Halloween Kills over the weekend, and I really enjoyed it.
mhm,
It's not the best of the movies, but it is a lot of fun, and it really feels like a horror movie from the 80s, which
cool.
is fun,
Mhm,
but I still prefer the Thorn timeline. So it's what's that? Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
mhm.
And even though Halloween 5, for some stupid reason, they completely changed Michael Myers' home and acted like it wasn't a big deal. I never understood that. I'm watching the movie and I'm going, that's not his house.
Yeah,
That doesn't even resemble the house from the first two movies. Like, what are you doing? And so I really appreciate in Halloween Kills that they kept it true
that's good.
to it looks exactly, well, not exactly, because people live in it this movie, but it's the same house, and I'm very glad they did that.
Right, right. Um, so as a young person, that one worked for me, and it was the measurement against which all others were placed, and most of them didn't really come close as far as
Mhm.
the quality. I really appreciate everything that was done on a low budget. It's all story. It's all
Yeah.
that vibe that comes with it. Um, the fifth one goes back to childhood because this one was so weird, but it really bugged me. Um, I think just because it was so unpredictable. It was called the Monolith Monsters, and I saw it on
Hmm.
a afternoon horror show block. And the Monolith Monsters, they were, basically it's the desert, and this meteor has gone down, and so these scientists are out here looking for fragments because it's a big meteor, and they find these weird little silicate chips, um, and they take them back to the lab for study. But when they go in the next day, the main research scientist is dead because something has collapsed the entire building. It's
Hmm.
fallen in on itself. These little silicate chips, when they get wet, they become these towering monoliths of rock. And of course, they're not very
Huh.
stable, so
Yeah.
they topple and kill everybody. That doesn't sound that scary, but when you're a little kid,
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, no. It's funny. I look back at some of the stuff I was scared at when I was a kid, and I'm just like, I was a little pansy. I was like Chad is now. And
I was just gonna say
and
that.
there
Like
we go. There
stuff
we
that
go.
killed you or that scared you when a kid, I'd get scared now. Yeah.
yeah.
What are you talking about?
Oh man, well that's a pretty good list, Clyde.
Hey, and then honorable mentions now. Jaws.
Yeah.
Chad, have you seen Jaws?
Oh yeah. I've seen a few,
Yeah.
like I've seen Hellraiser. In fact, did I
Wait, hold on. You've seen Hellraiser?
Yeah, let me tell you that it's a
Yeah.
super quick story.
Yeah.
You gotta
So
tell me this.
I was in sixth grade, I think. Sixth or seventh grade, somewhere around. No. It was before that. It was it was like third grade, I think.
Oh my gosh.
And
No wonder
yeah,
you
because I
don't
was
like horror movies.
I was living in California at the time. No, I'm sorry. It had to have been like fourth or fifth grade. Either way, all that aside, I was over at a friend's house. We were having a sleepover. A bunch of neighborhood kids came over, and like the older brother watching us, and he was like, "Hey, let's go rent a movie." So we went to like Blockbuster or whatever, and we're looking for a movie. And they were all like, all the kids were like, "Oh, let's get Hellraiser. It's so scary." Blah blah blah. I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." I didn't really want to watch it, but whatever. So we put it in, and we all started watching it. And like by the first 30 minutes, everyone had left except for me, another kid, and the older brother. And I sat there and watched the whole thing. And I wasn't like scarred because it was more gory than it was scary.
Yeah.
Because it's just like the Hellraiser dude comes through that mattress and like there's blood everywhere, and like Pinhead is a really cool looking character, but he's just not real enough to be scary for me. Like the ones that are really scary are like the demon possession ones, or like the ghost ones, or like the ones that are like the guy's like seriously messed up, and he, like the Halloween, those guys that are like there's a realism about them. Those ones really freak me out. But like that, yeah, the Hellraiser was not that scary. It just was like gory and whatever. It's kind of boring. Fair. So
yeah, that's another honorable mention one, because as an adult, and its realism scared me, was Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. I changed the entire way that I would come home after being gone at night because of that movie, because it was, more closely akin to a real serial killer and how they worked, based on Henry Lee Lucas, loosely based, but still somebody that was a very calculating killer that would make your last moments on Earth really, really awful. So yeah, that was something. And I had a family. I had a child at the time and a wife, and I pushed some buttons.
Yeah.
Now seeing him in Guardians of the Galaxy kind of helps a little bit, but yeah, that was another low budget but very effective. So those are a couple of the secondary ones. But
nice. Cool. I like, the thing I like about your list, Clyde, is now I have to go watch most of them because I haven't seen a lot of them, and I like that. I like when guests bring cool movies that I haven't seen.
Well, good.
I'm sure I will. I appreciate old horror movies, even if they are super cheesy and they don't hold up. I like putting my perspective, in the people who saw it first. You get like perfect example, The Exorcist, right? When that movie came out, now it's still pretty intense. Don't get me wrong, but now the Conjuring and other movies like that. There are some movies that are more intense than The Exorcist now, far above and beyond. But back then, it was the most traumatizing, most terrifying movie that had ever been seen. And people were literally going insane. People were literally passing out. People were literally, having serious issues just watching this movie. And so when I think I was like 19 or 20 the first time I saw The Exorcist, and my mom had talked it up so much because she saw it in theaters. And I watched it, and back then I was like, what? And I watched it and I was like, well, this isn't that scary. I was like, there are some parts that are pretty disturbing, and what did I know? I was 19 or 20 years old. And then I watched it a couple years later, and I had studied film a little bit, and just the importance of The Exorcist for the horror genre. And just how movies went from, it was the cheesy, almost tongue-in-cheek type of horror until that happened. And it was just like, I would say, Clyde, do you know which came out first, The Exorcist or Suspiria? Because that was an Italian film.
Right. I'd have to look and see.
I can't remember, sure. But nothing in America had really been released that was that intense. No. So,
and it made the way for Damien. Omen movies and things like that. But yeah, it definitely showed, well, one, that it could be very profitable.
Yeah.
Two, that Rosemary's Baby was not a fluke.
Right.
And then it kind of paved the way for more things like it. But yeah, it was
Shining as well. Came out after that. Yeah.
Yeah. And became movies also. Not only books but movies based on. But I always liked its subtlety. It had a lot of gore and a lot of things that at the time, I didn't see it as a little kid because it wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
When I got older, I watched it, and it was one of those I did not feel compelled to watch a lot. It was unsettling enough. I didn't like it. I didn't like feeling that way about it because, again, it's an evil that I believe in.
Right.
But some of the subtlety, like, how about an old choir boy fada?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, because it indicates that evil is pervasive. The devil can be in a lot of different places. If God is everywhere, Satan is probably not too far behind in keeping tabs on where you're at, what buttons to push. And that to me was a very effective it was not the pea soup scenes; it was the smaller things like that that got me.
Yeah,
Got
and
me.
it's I watched for those of you who have Shudder, there is an amazing documentary. I forgot what it's called at the moment, but it's just search in the Exorcist documentary, and it's a long hour and a half interview with not Blatty, Friedkin,
Oh,
the director,
yeah.
and my gosh, it'll change the way you see film, but it'll change the way you see that movie. The Exorcist is one of my favorite movies because of how serious it takes itself
Mm-hmm.
and how well Blatty depicted everything. Just the Father Marin, Father Karras, both of those guys are so distinct as characters, and they're both on two separate journeys. And then when they end up together, like it's not it doesn't feel very climactic as far as like a Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
style climactic, but it feels very climactic as a realistic,
Mm-hmm.
like you've seen both of their struggles, both of their journeys, and now they're coming together to help this little girl. And that aspect of their journeys coming together, and then everybody that you've seen separately in all of these scenes are now coming together as an ensemble at the end. I mean, yeah, it's no joke at all. It inspired Memoirs of an Angel, which is right now live on Kickstarter, issue 8, hashtag always promote. Just go to this link right here. But no, it inspired that, and just how brilliant the book is. I don't know if you've ever read the book. Blatty takes it up a notch. The book does.
Mm-hmm.
I got the audio book of him reading it, and I didn't sleep that night when I read it. So, but it's very, very good. Let's jump into some of these comments. Sarah says she's way behind on her movies. Don't worry, Sarah. I am too. Like I said, I didn't know a couple of those that you did. And she said, Storm of the Century is a good one. The screenplay was written by Stephen King himself. I got to say, Stephen King, I loved Creepshow.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love Creepshow. It was fun. Um, Stephen King with movies can be hit or miss for me. But yeah, I really I haven't watched that one. Have you?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
It's
Chad, have you watched it?
I was actually watching it before we got on the show.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's gotcha. Yeah.
um, and yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
agree. The Stephen King stuff, as far as movie versions, is kind of hit or miss. For a long time, The Dead Zone was my
Oh
favorite.
gosh, yes.
Stephen King movie because, and I've read the book, and it's a little bit different, but the changes they made for the movie, I think, were needed and they worked well cinematically. But I wasn't a big fan of the TV show, but the movie itself, although it is now somewhat dated and stuff, putting yourself in the position of the protagonist, what would you do? What you've
Yeah.
been, or as one sheriff says, God has seen fit to give you this gift. Gift. Let me tell you what God's done for me, buddy. I mean,
Yeah.
that whole, you just feel it's a great performance, and you just feel like, yeah, that would be a form of living hell to
Yeah.
feel somebody else's pain and go through the things that they, are going through. And now, if you can change it, it would make you feel better about it. But you don't always know whether you can or
Yeah.
not with him. So,
Did you ever watch the show that
the
came on
show.
USA? The television show of Dead Zone?
Oh, I have watched some episodes of it. They changed it enough. I just couldn't really
Yeah, it's
get
okay.
into it.
It's okay. And of course, he's definitely not Christopher Walken.
No, neither
Yeah.
neither is the senator wanting to be president. I can't think of his name. He did his presidential stint on the West Wing. It was fine.
Martin
Yeah.
Sheen.
Michael Sheen.
Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen. There
Yeah.
it is. There's too many of them.
But as Greg Stilson, he is, and he's not even as vile as he is in the book, but he's still quite effective as the politician that has his own agenda that is not necessarily. He's just a little off bubble. he's,
Yeah.
he's certifiable and he's got nuclear weapons. It's not a great combo. So.
Very kind of similar, not as intense, but it's similar to his role in Spawn.
Well, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. I thought of that when the first time I saw Spawn. I'm like, he's going to get typecast as the guy who don't have any power. Look at this. But yeah, they did West Wing, and I'm like, well, I guess he broke that.
Oh yeah, he was fantastic in that show. Ted Davies says, "Smash that like button, kids, and yes, please do. If you're watching, please like and subscribe. We much appreciate it." And Sarah says that she liked and subscribed for this the new YouTube account she has. She says she forgot the older one's login info. I know the struggle for sure. And let's see. Brian says they changed what? Nuked them from space, killed them with fire.
Wow.
Yeah, they really did. I think that's in regards to the changing of the house, which they absolutely did, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, well, I know people live in the, there's like a little. I saw a documentary over the weekend. There's like a little shrine out front. This little thing that people put up going, yes, this is the house. So people are living in the house. It's a real house.
Oh, yeah.
In Pasadena. So maybe they just couldn't get it. But you'd think that they would have just built the exterior on the lot.
Right. Make a facade and then build a set. I don't understand. So we'll never know.
Weird.
Sarah said people have looked at me in horror when I'm laughing during the horror movies. All right, I have a story for this one. So my buddy Brent, we saw it part 1 together in the theaters, and the part where Pennywise is holding the kid's severed hand and waves with it and is like chuckling. Well, Brent lost his mind in the theater and was literally cackling at that scene, and everyone around us is going, what's wrong with this guy? So never take Brent and Sarah to a horror movie together. That's the lesson that we've all learned here. And hello, Rad Publishing. How are you, Rick Davies? Rick Davies. Good grief, Rick Bradley. Good evening, all. Is Brian being nice to come on?
No,
nice
never.
Never. Come on, man.
I'm always so kind to him, and all the things I say about him is always uplifting and encouraging. He's my favorite artist, my favorite person. There's a glow, a halo around him of his goodness and kindness, and he never responds. And likewise,
and you know what? I feel the same way that Brian K. Morris feels right now. Are you kidding, Rick? And then he says, I know, of course, right after I post that, he starts making fun of him. I mean, really, though, it's just so easy, Come on now.
Well, so stepping on baby ducks, but there's not much of a challenge to it. What's the deal?
Clyde just called you a baby duck. Did you hear that?
It's fine. You know what? Man. It's fine. I don't care. Or whatever. You know what? You know what I have to say about all that?
Oh, no.
What's that? Uh-oh. What's happening?
The Silence. You can get this at thesilencecomics.com, thesilencearts.com. This is one of the best comic books you've ever read. Better than Memoirs of an Angel.
Oh, that's not correct at all. Let's see. Let's see. I'm on issue 8. What are you on, Chad?
I'm almost with number 2. In fact, I'm almost finished with the last page. So
no, I think that's pretty cool, man. Speaking of which, you have to head out early a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, I hear probably 10 or 15 more minutes.
Okay, cool. Well, to lead us into that, before we jump in to some more comments, let's get to the first question on the list for you, Clyde. So tell us your story, Clyde. You are an experienced writer. You've done cosplay. You review comic books with some pretty fantabulous individuals. And you advocate for libraries and volunteer at the library. tell us what, start from little Clyde. How did you
Okay.
get from little Clyde to doing all these awesome things?
Okay, there's really a timeline here. 1964, Chicago. Living in the suburbs after being born on a farm way down by Kentucky. We moved up there for about 9 months. I see a guy flying across the television screen. I've never seen anything quite like that before. And then I learned that this guy's called Superman, and that this is a show that used to be on, and now it's on in the mornings before school. Forward me to about 3 years later. I'm running around the yard, back down where I grew up, where I was born, down in the southern part of Illinois, in a little town. And my mother has, because she won't ruin a good T-shirt with it, she has written a big red S on my chest and given me a towel for a cape so I can fly around and play Superman, like on the New Adventures of Superman, which is an animated show on Saturday mornings. I was somewhat bitten by the comic book bug, you might figure. They taught me how to read. Brian K. Morris is the only person I know besides myself who used, when teachers were like, give us a word that's unusual that you've learned this summer. Invulnerable. That's not something that a first grader normally tells me. Where did you read that? In a comic book? Oh, yeah, because there was still a stigma about that.
Yep.
When I was in school. So also admitting that you like comic books too much would be a good way to get beat up by older kids. That was just not cool. So at the same time, we had monster. That was the era of cartoon TV show, cartoon hosts, and horror hosts. So I was awash with. I was a heavyset little kid, and I liked to read, and I could sit in front of the TV and just, bring in all the good Universal horror movies, all of the cartoons of the year, like Space Ghost, Scott McCloud's Space Angel, those kind of shows. And then in the summer of 1968, CBS decided to have to run a series, just a summertime series, just kind of a one-shot thing called The Prisoner. There was no. My folks would not let Star Trek in the house. My father said it was just baloney. So he wouldn't let us watch anything like that. But they were okay with the Wild Wild West because it was a Western. They were okay with the Avengers from Britain because it was a spy show.
Yeah.
They had guns and gunplay. It was okay. It was all right. Yeah. Star Trek he couldn't understand, so he didn't like it. We couldn't watch it. But for some reason, they let this little kid watch this Orwellian weird village with a giant ball that would come pick you up out of the water and whisk you back if you tried to escape. And as a little kid, I was like, this is just so wrong. It twisted me. I look back at that and I started reading because they were talking about Orwellian, and I'm like, I don't know what Orwell. So I started checking out George Orwell and that kind of stuff as a really young person. When I got to where I could read better, but it kind of set the tone for. And I would talk to people about remember the Prisoner where they had that big balloon that would come and get you, that rover would come and make this sound as it came and got. Remember that? And people would go, no. No, man, I think, no, that's messed up. No, I remember that. That's crap. No. So I got used to liking things that everybody else went, what? Yeah. What are you talking about? And then over the course of life, I've seen that kind of turn around, where people would come and go, you like comic books. So what is this Guardians of the Galaxy stuff? Why are they making that instead of, like the Captain Marvel movie or whatever? So that all changed. That was cool. But I always wrote. In high school, I rewrote the Odyssey for extra credit and turned it into a sci-fi story.
Nice.
Yeah, took a whole the entire Easter break. I spent rewriting the Odyssey and making it a sci-fi story. And my teacher was, I think she was biased, but she said, "This is genius. Keep writing." Genius. Not a word normally applied to me, but it was now. So I was like, okay. So I started taking a course here a community education course. A local guy had written some things, and he got some books published. So I went to listen. He was a good writer. I'd read the books. He was really. I'd read some of his short stories that he wrote, and they were just. Novels are one thing, but if you can write a good short story, I think you're exceptional because you don't have a lot of space to do that. You have to really be good to write good short stories. So I had read his short stories going, this guy is a major player. So went to the class and learned a lot, but he was very much like this. He's going, I'm newly married, kid on the way. And he's like, yeah, I work doing this, doing this, doing this. I make about this much a year. And I'm like, wow, he is that good a writer. And he's not making enough that I could raise a family on.
Yeah.
So like a lot of things in my life, it went two different ways. It's like, I'm going to get a job where I can make money. And I'm going to write, I wrote game modules to run D&D games. I desked and coded complete cities in superhero mushes. I made Gotham and made Metropolis because I knew the parts of it. I just had to creatively describe it and then do all the coding for it, which you could get people to do just about any kind of storytelling, but to build things, you couldn't get a lot done. So I've written all the time just for fun, just for, I had a very high stress job, so it was good. It was good to have that as a hobby. I was like, I don't need to sell anything with it because I'm making okay. I've got retirement coming up. I'm putting away money for retirement. It's good. And so once I retired 6 years ago, I got back to the idea of, maybe now that I don't have to make a living at it, I can be a hobbyist writer and sell some things. And that's kind of what happened. Right before that, I got an opportunity to write a critique, to be a comic book critique on a website called Doom Rocket, which was composed of really young people who really know comic books and are really good writers. I'm like the token old guy. So I had to get my game plan. And I had never written critiques of comics before. So I spent 2.5 years with them learning how to be a comic book critic and reviewer. More reviewer than a critic because we like to encourage. So that was the tone that they had, and I really appreciated that. So that's how I was doing that, and then they went on hiatus. They still do a podcast called Casual Wednesdays. Look it up on Spotify or Apple. It's really good. And then the opportunity came up to work with Brian on some projects, and the rest is recent history. So. But that's the progression of being nerdy kid. And a friend of mine, one of the things that I'm kind of proud of, but what kind of nerd are you? I see that's a question you ask a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, a friend of mine called me one time. He's a high school kid. He's sitting at our table. He's playing D&D and Chill, which is a horror game that I run. And he's looking at me, and I'm working a job that's you don't see a lot of writers or people. You don't see a lot of people that are into fantasy doing this job. It's real world. It's very rough. And he says, we were talking about nerds. It's like, we're all nerds. I'm a nerd. You're a nerd. And he's like, you're a geek. Okay. And he goes, you're a nerd who gets things done. He's like, you have a job and you do all this stuff. Because we knew people that were doing the same stuff we were doing, but 30 years old and maybe not having a career yet.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you have a career and a job that you take very seriously, and then all of a sudden you just flip it and you run a game with monsters and vampires and werewolves and ghosts and superheroes. And he goes, and he's an artist, and he's like, I always used to wonder how I could be an artist and also, but I see you doing it all the time. So I like to think of myself as a geeky nerd, a nerd who gets things done. So
I like that. I like that a lot.
Me too.
Nerd.
It's the highest compliment you could ask for from a high school kid, especially. So
for sure.
Yeah.
So as you guys know, I do have to get off here and go to a birthday party. I do want to say, Clyde, it's very nice to meet you and talk with you. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to leave the studio and come back later and listen to your answer because I'm very interested to hear this. I don't care for Brian's questions, so I'm just going to make up my own question.
All right.
What I want to know, Clyde, is and then I'm gonna leave here. But what I want to know, Clyde, is what is your writing schedule like, and how did you get to that point? Like, as you were growing as a writer, just talk a little bit about some of your milestones, some of the things that were really difficult for you, and how you got over that. And then I'd love to just hear practically your weekly schedule. Like, how much time do you spend writing every day? Do you have to like force yourself to write? Do you have to say from 10 to 2 in the afternoon, that's when I write? Or are you more like, I have some time, I'll write for a little bit? Like, I'd love to hear all that. For me personally, because I draw and I write and I like to create, I'd love to hear other creators and their process and what they do. I learn a lot from that. So I'd really love to hear that. So having said all that, Clyde, thank you. You are, I love you. You're awesome. Brian, I hate you. I hope you have a horrible night.
Have fun at your birthday party, man.
I'm just playing. You guys have a great night, and I look forward to hearing your answer. See you guys.
All right.
See you later, Chad.
Yeah,
all right. Now we finally got rid of that guy.
I'm not answering that question.
Yeah, it's
okay.
crap.
Let's go with it. No.
No, that was actually a really interesting.
Yeah, it was a good question, and I would love to know how. I'd love to hear how he does his the same thing, except he draws also. So I'd love to hear.
Very, very slowly.
Well.
No, it really, in all seriousness,
Dave Stevens, and look what he did.
Oh yeah, Chad. So Chad, I have to, now that he's gone, I can say good things about him. Chad worked so hard to get issue 1 of The Silence out, and I mean, Chad is brilliant. I don't know too many people that are as smart as that man. And the amount of attention to world building that he put into just the first issue of The Silence is phenomenal. And Chad was working some crazy jobs there for a little while, trying to just to take care of his family and figure out what career path he wanted to stick with. And just recently, I don't know if you're aware of this, just last month he became a full-time comic creator and graphic design artist.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So yeah.
Nice.
So very, very proud of him. Very happy for him. But that's enough. That's enough of that. On to what he asked you, because I'm actually interested as well.
Okay. I went from it was kind of a slow build. Like the first year I was off, I slept. I haven't slept that much since before college. I mean,
yeah.
So because we were always short staffed where I worked, so it was always, even you go on vacation and you would forget it so much. You go back and you'd be looking at your stuff, at your equipment, going, I don't remember how to do this. You've only been gone a week. I really tried to forget it,
Yeah.
So my first year, I did not write a whole lot. Although Doom Rocket popped up very quickly, so I suddenly had at least a weekly assignment, sometimes a couple of times a week, doing reviews like that. Then I even helped them do, like, they would have a preview drop from DC, Marvel, or one of the other companies, and they'd be like, hey, can you do this? Because I'm really busy today, and I got to go down to the comic book shop and work. Can you do this for me? Yeah, okay. So I was kind of writer at large for them. So whenever something would happen, they'd be like, hey, look, it's Betty and Veronica love story special. So you gotta do that for you. You know about Betty and Veronica, right? You can do that. Okay. Let me see the preview. Okay, yeah, I can write something on it. But it really tested the boundaries of what genres are you familiar with? What ones can you write about and bring something that sounds at least halfway knowledgeable, or that would be of interest to people that follow those things. Mm-hmm. But it got me into new comic books, which the New 52 had happened, and I was not real happy with DC. Yeah. I think the words were, DC, you are dead to me.
Ooh, you hated it that much then, huh?
You are dead currently. That's your DC now, because and it was not because of change. I really handle change pretty decently. It was some of the kinds of change that I'm like, it's like, yes, the JSA, passe, we're not doing anything with them. The Legion of Superheroes are some of my favorite things. They just were like, nah, it's gone. We don't need.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I can read the old ones. It's all right.
Right.
But they got me kicking and screaming and dragged me back into the new things that are out there that weren't necessarily DC and Marvel. And then some,
Yeah.
and then eventually some of the DC and Marvel stuff it was New 52, but it was really good.
Yeah.
You know? So they kind
Of
of
the New
salvaged it.
52, what was your favorite?
I really did like the reimagining of Blue Beetle.
Okay.
The Reyes version of Blue Beetle. I really, really liked that. Villains Unlimited. I think that was like maybe right at the cusps of New 52.
Yeah.
And then they became the Secret Six. Part of that run I really liked. Let me think here. Those are, I mean, I gotta admit, there's not a lot of the New 52 that the Shazam changes where they, I like him being Captain Marvel, but the way they did the Shazam with the foster children and the movie, the Shazam movie is almost it's a pretty straight take of that storyline.
Oh yeah.
And I really liked it. I really, the character really needed to be updated for a modern audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he did a good job.
I think the only thing out of New 52 that I really liked was the Batman, the ongoing Batman stuff. I loved what Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo were doing.
Yeah.
I think that with Court of Owls was probably one of the best fresh Batman villain to come out of comics or just the Batman lore since I would say Mask of the Phantasm.
They have sticking. The Court of Owls has sticking power, and anytime you can introduce somebody into the Rogues Gallery that can do that, it's for something.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. But so I went from being this comic book reviewer and writing things like that to I got a shot at contributing some stories with Brian because I had submitted some things to a comic book company that was accepted, but they didn't publish them. So it was like, they got a storehouse of stuff and they were just kind of sitting there going, okay, we got this and we wanted it, but can you tell me when it's going to be out? No, not really. Other things. Okay. So I went back to Brian and went, do you know anybody but I had written some things that were like textual stories, little fillers between the comic stories. And I'm like, I really enjoyed that, and that seems more maybe my thing. Anybody that needs a writer of short stories and we have a Charles Millhouse from Stormgate Press, and Charles took a chance on me, and it turned out really well. I could provide some things for his publications and help me to get into the mode of short stories. So, and then Comic Book Spectrum came up, so I write my review for that. That's one day of that. I will work on something for Stormgate Press or my own book that I've been working on. That's another day. I write for a church. I do two like update bulletin devotionals a week. So each one of those takes a day. So before very long, I've got a full day, a full week of writing. But but then deadline gets close. Usually I work ahead quite a bit, but sometimes I'll get onto a project that I really like, but it's hard writing. Yeah. And I will procrastinate and I will put it off. So, there are times when I'm like, okay, this deadline's coming up in a month. I set the alarm for 4:00 in the morning. I get up. I get everything done that I would normally, do throughout the day. Just, I do this radiate positive vibes thing every day. I find something.
I love them too. It's great.
Thank you. But it's just a positive thing to make you smile or to get you off on one good thing on your feed every day on Facebook.
Please just show me one good thing.
One thing you can kind of enjoy, or something local where somebody, I create a friend spotlight where I go, hey, look, this Memoirs of an Angel thing is going. they should get over to Kickstarter and check this out. But yeah, so promote for, but I try to use it for things besides that. Some days there's 2 or 3 updates like that, but I get all that done like before 6 o'clock. It's like, okay, now 6 on, let's see how much we can write.
Yeah.
And I'll just write till I like, okay, I have used but 14 times in this paragraph. I think I'm done for the day now. So,
Yeah.
but that's my general thing is about a 5-day. And if I just finished this a Stormgate Press thing that I really enjoyed. It was one of those more difficult things to write, and it was a existing science fiction character that I got to do a story for an upcoming anthology. And when I got it done, I took a weekend right in the middle of my week because I'm retired. I can do that. I'm like, I'm taking 2 days.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do, I don't know, whatever I want. Like I'm going to get caught up on the Titans, which I didn't quite do. I'm going to watch the Creep Show series on Shudder.
Yes.
I'm going to
Yeah.
watch some Halloween era, some Halloween season biopics and things like that, interview shows.
Yeah.
Well, I got to find the one that you're talking about The Exorcist. I think I've seen some clips from that, but I haven't seen the whole thing.
Oh, it's so good.
Well, Friedkin's
It's so
talking.
good. Yeah.
So, but that's kind of my thing is about 5 days a week. They may not be all in a row. It depends on what else is going on. But
So let me, as a natural night owl, for you waking up at 4 a.m. gives me indigestion. So what? So what time do you normally go to bed if you wake up that early?
Okay. I worked, the job that I had was I did nights for 30 years,
Oh, okay.
basically.
Yeah.
And so when I said I got caught up on sleep when I retired, I literally finally managed to get onto a schedule that's more like a normal person's.
Yeah.
And so I usually go to bed around midnight, sometimes 11 o'clock. And then if I get up at 4, I'll usually take a nap sometime in the afternoon. Having completed a bunch of stuff, I'll be like, now I may rest. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'll watch it. I know I'm not going to go to sleep. I'll just watch it.
Yeah. I'll just watch this.
Yeah.
Every time. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen this in yet. I still haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I have, my hats are off to everybody that is doing the deal of working a job, working a 40-hour week, and then working in addition or more. Yes. I know you and many other people are doing that. So I kept it as a hobby until after because I didn't think I could do both well enough to,
I'm the only reason that I can, now there's 2 big reasons that I can. One is Robin, my wife, is so supportive, and helps me. She's my business partner in the business side of making comics, and then 2 is I have an amazing employer who allows me to take time to essentially very much focus on this as a second full-time job. And I'm very thankful for both of those things. Those are the 2 big deal breakers. If I didn't have one or the other, I probably wouldn't be able. I would probably do like a web comic type thing, as much as I could, and that would probably be it.
Right.
But yeah, no, not everybody has those 2 things. So that's why when people I give Chad a hard time about the fact that he put 1 issue out in 2016 and then he's just now doing issue 2. Well, life happens.
Yeah.
The man's got kids, a wife, and he's an excellent father and husband. And again, I'm complimenting Chad way too much, but like a lot of people are in that boat where they get something put out and then they have other priorities that they have to attend to. So no, but yeah, and my situation could absolutely change. Here's hoping that it doesn't. But yeah, it is tough though because the schedule is pretty grueling. Let's kind of skip around a little bit, Clyde. We talked about we talked about you writing with Stormgate Press. So tell me how you got connected with them, and then tell me a little bit about B-Man.
Okay. Brian introduced me to Charles, and Charles was looking for writers for this pulp reality anthology. And Brian and we cosplay. When I was doing some cosplay, going to cons, I met Brian. And I listened to one of his talks on writing, and I was very inspired. And then I got to talk to him one-on-one, and it wore off. No, it was still, still very inspired. No, more so, even more so, because he and I are of a similar age, and he has been a writer for hire for a long time, and he had we like a lot of the same things, so we had quite a bit to, anybody that I can go, well, when the Dell people came out with the monster superheroes, that was like the epitome of cheese, and he's like, I love that, and it's so good. I'm like, my brother. Yeah, my people.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It's so funny you say that. I feel that way about our comic book spectrum crew.
Yeah.
We all just nerd out over the same things, and it's so fun that we've all become such close friends over nerding out over all those things. It's great.
And what really is good, you nerd out over some things that I can take or leave.
Yeah,
But watching you nerd out over it and seeing your excitement, and also hearing why it matters to you, gives me a whole new appreciation for a lot of those things. So it definitely goes both ways. And yes, it is. It's one of those things where you're like, hey, when you get retired, what would you think about getting together with some of your best friends for a night and just talking comic books and having everybody chime in like in an audience?
Heaven.
Yeah. Who must I kill to be part of this team?
Right, yes, indeed. So you met Brian, and your world became amazing again.
He hooked me up with Charles, because he thought, he's like, you like pulp stuff? I'm like, oh yeah. So you could write like New Pulp, and I didn't know New Pulp, so I started reading up on New Pulp and reading some of the Stormgate things, and I was like, yeah, okay. So he was needing characters that were from I believe 1900 to 1970 was the span he wanted of stories. So you could, it could be World War II, it could be the 30s, and everybody seemed to be doing something along that Depression era or World War II. So, or maybe the 50s, a few of them in the 50s. But I was like, I'm going to do 1960s because I was a kid in the 60s, so I should remember some things from it. And I wanted somebody, Lester Dent's Doc Savage was interesting to read, and yet, okay, he is the leader of a group of people that are all experts in their fields. He's the best, but he's better than all of them.
Right.
At each individual thing. And I always, I have a suspension of disbelief that spans quite a bit, but there was always something about Doc Savage that, although I enjoyed the stories, and even the George Powell movie I liked, okay,
Yeah.
As campy as it was, but that just bugged me. And then I started reading The Shadow. I'm like, okay, here's a guy that doesn't always come out on top initially. Normally he does at the end, but he has to struggle, even though he's got powers. He has to struggle and use intermediaries and things like that. Okay, I was more in tune with that. And then the Phantom. Okay, here's a guy that lives up to a legend, but he's purely human.
Yeah, love the Phantom.
Love the Phantom. So he's also kind of he is the bridge between comic books, along with Wildcat from DC Comics, a bridge between pulp heroes and comic book characters.
So for people who don't know, why don't you tell the difference? Say the difference between pulp and new pulp.
Okay, in pulp, it is very much, a lot of it is very much a product of its time. A lot of things from pulp would offend modern readers. It just would, because there weren't a lot of African American heroes. In a pulp. There weren't a lot of females that weren't going, oh, save me!
Right, exactly.
Okay. There was not a lot of diversity in the pulps. And new pulp is written in such a way, tries to, that it transcends that a bit. And yeah, you can have more diverse characters, and you can have situations that at one time things were kind of propagandized like the comic books, as far as Germans are bad,
Yeah.
and the communist threat is bad. Those Red Menace, you can still have that to a certain degree, but it's taken in the context of time, so that some of it's over the top, and you realize it's not entirely serious. Whereas originally, you may not know if it was entirely serious or not.
Right.
Insensitivity to racial differences because of war. I understand that, and at the time that the things were written, that was a real concern. I had uncles that fought in World War II and didn't know if they were going to come back from the Pacific campaign.
Yeah.
Asian folks were not their favorite people.
Yeah.
Even after, it just, I can empathize with what they went through and seeing a certain race as an enemy. But modern audiences, you have to transcend that and still deliver a good quality pulp adventure. Indiana Jones, that is a very good version of, it's a pulp trope that is updated enough that a modern audience not only liked it, but loved it enough for, what is it, the 5th sequel coming up?
Yeah, 5th sequel comes out now. It's 2023. They bumped
Okay.
it up. I'm pretty sure they're just going to have to put Harrison Ford in cryogenic stasis.
but that was a big hit in the 80s because it was nostalgic, but it also it dealt more positively, I think, with pulp, with the whole pulp genre. So that's what the goal is of new pulp.
Okay.
So, but I set mine in the 60s, and I had a guy that B-Man. I always liked the characters that were weird, like Dial H for Hero. This is a kid that has an H dial. It's magical, we guess, but when he dials HERO, he becomes a superhero. Oh, like Superman? No. He becomes a hero nobody's ever heard of, and who may have a power that doesn't really even fit this situation that he's in. It's a pretty random thing, and he doesn't know for sure. And he has to, if it turns out that he has a power that is not very helpful, he has to figure out a way to make it helpful. So it's a real creative stretch for the person writing the story, I always thought. And when we were doing role play games, I had a character called B-Man who he found, this is like 10 years before Ben 10.
Yeah, okay.
He found the crashed spaceship on his way home late at night, and he was working at a movie theater that showed like a college theater that shows old goofy movies. And this alien, he was trying to pull him out of the flaming wreckage of this spacecraft, and he had a hold of this belt that was around the alien, and all of a sudden the belt melded to him. It's intelligent, and its host was dying, so it has this belt that just kind of disappears. But he feels weird. He figures out that he has, I think it was 8 alien forms stowed in this belt, from where this alien would go to different worlds and adapt their forms. Very Ben 10 kind of story, because when I describe it to other people, they go,
very Ben 10, yeah.
This is a Ben 10 story. I'm like, I wrote it way before that for a game. But B-Man I always thought was a cool name, because he named it after all of the aliens kind of were like some of the characters from B movies. Like one of them was a gelatinous glob. So it's like the blob. One of them was a giant nematode. So it's like a sandworm from Dune. One of them was a golden skinned Herculean or Athenian kind of Greek god. So he called him Heracles, like the Hercules movies, like a Steve Reeves movie. One was a space vampire-looking guy that would like suck energy off of you, so he called him Space Goth, because he had like a high collar and was very vampire. So it was just, it was a fun character. We played for a couple of years, but I had always tucked him away as that's somebody I could write something like that. So I pulled out that idea and I analogued it into a guy that owns a movie theater. He's Criswell Speaks, that's not his real name, because he was part of a Boston dynasty of lawyers, and he didn't want to be a lawyer. Well, they're going on like 4 generations of lawyers, and it's not really a
Yeah.
question. So he joins the military. He doesn't get drafted. He joins at the end of right before the end of World War II, and then on the GI Bill, he goes on his own and he takes college courses and he becomes a film major.
Yeah.
So his parents go, "Well, would you mind taking a different name so we're not associated with you?" Sure. And here's a stipend. Just go live your life and leave us alone. Okay. So he ends up in the Chicago area, and he's going to. It's 66, so he's going to coffee houses. He listens to beat poetry, and he's a failed film major because nobody wants to hire a film major for anything. So he's just doing odd jobs, living
Right.
off his stipend, just a bum. But this movie theater, this old rundown movie theater across from the Cava Cove, catches his eye, and the city's going to auction it off just for back taxes.
Hmm.
So he's like, I think, you know what? I could be a failed theater owner as much as I could be a failed film student.
Yeah.
So I'll just buy this place, and there's a college just a few blocks away, so the college crowd will show movies that you won't see at other theaters, and I'll make a little money. It'll be great. Well, this place is so broken down that he's finally figures out, yeah, it's gonna just bleed me dry. But he meets a girl that is she's a psychic in a little shop nearby, and she also works at the Cove as a waitress, and she is an absolute fraud. she tells anybody that's not a client, I got no problem, because he goes to her going, I need help. I think I have a psychic. I think the place is haunted. And she goes, okay, I know a little bit about supernatural because I've studied it, but I don't have any powers. Oh, okay. So Drea helps him pick out movies. They kind of become buddies, and she's helping to pick out different films and things and trying to help him keep his head above water. And one night they're there figuring out what they're going to show for the weekend, and somebody breaks in. It's a gang of thieves who have killed a fellow drug dealer and taken all of his stuff. And now the police are canvassing the neighborhood, so they get in here thinking there's nobody in the theater. It's after hours, it's all closed down. Well, they're there. So he decides he's got to try to, well, there's 4 of them, so he's going to try to face off against them because they don't know they're there. They're up in the office. So he's going to try to face off against them to give her a chance to get away. And he's thinking like, he's thinking of Gumshoe Gherkin, who's a PI from a Poverty Row studio that he's like, what would Gumshoe Gherkin do? And when he thinks about that, he gets this weird lightheadedness and he becomes Gumshoe Gherkin. And through this facing off against these bad guys, he changes into different B-movie characters that he knows.
Yeah.
And that he feels these movies have played here at this theater. So Drea figures out that there's a ley line pattern that converges here at this where the theater was built. And all the movies over the years and all of the fantasies that people have enjoyed, the dreams they've had from this movie theater, have given the theater, along with this deep well of magical power, have given the theater a certain amount of sentience. And he can tap into that because he's a kindred spirit to it.
Yeah.
So that's the basic premise. And then we follow up with a whodunit. There's a whodunit story. There's they find out a little bit more about how it all came to be, and that there's a guiding intelligence behind the hauntings and the theater. So, and then eventually they find out that maybe the whole thing of the convalescing of ley lines here was not by accident. There could be other interested parties involved. So that's the basic story plot line for this whole arc that I put together. So
that is I love it. That is so cool. Now are both of your stories in Stormgate Press's it just drew a blank. Reality pulp reality. There it is.
Yeah.
Wow. I've said it enough. You think I remember it. Are both of those stories B-Man?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sticking with doing just B-Man stories. for the 4 planned issues of Pulp Reality. And like I said, it should take me through the arc that I had in mind when I started. It's
All right.
taken some diverse, and each is a standalone story. You don't have to know anything about the others. You don't have to read it.
Right.
It's not like chapter, chapter, chapter. But if you have, there'll be some details that come up that you go, oh. In the third story, there's a reference to this old safe that's been left behind from the early days of the theater, and it's mentioned in the first story, but it's not a big deal. And then you find out it is kind of a big deal in the third. So they kind of hang together, although they also stand alone. So
That's fascinating. I love it. I'm gonna go read them now tonight. I have them both on my stack next to my bed, so I'm gonna go jump into that story right after this. I think. Let's jump into some comments really quick. Rick says, "Low budget horror done right. Horror movies done right are the best horror movies ever. They can be for sure, for sure." And Ted thought The Omen was scary as hell. I see what you did there, sir. But I also, Ted continues, but I also thought Legally Blonde was scary to watch it too.
Yeah, okay.
Sarah says, I laughed through Hellraiser and laughed harder when a guy in my dining room who always talked tough was creeped out by my laughter. Well done, Sarah.
Yes.
Oh man. So let's see, jumping through here. Rick says, my sister always told me that Evil Dead was the scariest movie ever. I watched it and laughed out loud most of the time because it's still all-time favorite. Evil Dead is Sam Raimi does this wonderful comedic horror balance because some stuff in the Evil Dead series is downright terrifying and some of it is hilarious. And Sam Raimi is such a great horror popcorn flick guy. And I really miss him making movies. I want to see more from him.
Horror comedy is a genre that I really like, and there wasn't a lot of it. There wasn't very much that was good. But then you had Monster Squad. You had
Wolfman's got nards.
Yeah. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is like
yes,
for a while, that was the only one. It's the standard.
Yeah.
That one, Monster Squad. Bubba Hotep.
Yes.
Army of Darkness. Just sort of like Return of the Living Dead. Actual horror at times in just about all those, but then also a real spirit of comedic value to it all. But it's such a weird balance, and when people can make those and make them well, my hat's off to them. So
yeah, and I mean because you can do one or the other. You can have mostly horror with some funny, or you can have mostly funny with a little bit of horror. Like on that end, Tucker and Dale versus Evil comes to mind. I love that movie. Yeah. It is so funny, but it is a comedy that deals with the horror genre. But yeah, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. That was actually the first. Abbott and Costello was just their first horror movie that I ever watched because they had a whole series of comedy horror. The first thing I ever watched of theirs that really started getting me into horror was Hold That Ghost. And I love that movie. I still can't find it. I want to find it and own it, but I think it's in one of the collections or something. I'll have to get all of them. Darn. I love Abbott and Costello, so that's fine. But yeah, I love a good horror comedy. Something that can make me jump and giggle in the same movie consistently. You've earned my money. Sarah says that Stigmata comes to mind. Yeah, that was back when we were talking about just, really crazy horror, I'm sure. Yeah. Brian says Creepshow was a classic. I only enjoyed about 15 seconds of Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah. Okay.
Then he goes on.
Yeah, it was good.
Creepshow was great. He said the creepiest thing about Firestarter was how George C. Scott leered at a way too young Drew Barrymore. Yeah, that little bit. I love George C. Scott though. I got to tell you, two of my favorite horror movies star him, and that's The Exorcist 3 and The Changeling. both of those movies are phenomenal
Yes.
horror movies. Changeling is more of a mystery than it is a horror, but it has
It's
some
creepy,
horror
though.
tropes.
Oh,
It's super
yeah.
creepy.
Super
Oh yeah, my metal. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he's
the
also a great
seance.
Scrooge, so he works with
Oh, he's
ghosts
the best
for the
Scrooge
Christmas.
that there ever was or ever will be, in my opinion. I read A Christmas Carol every Christmas time,
Me
and
too.
I just picture him in my head every time
I
I
hear
read it.
his voice saying it, and
Oh
that's saying
yeah.
a lot because to have a not British guy playing, when someone
Yes.
first told me, uh, I didn't watch it first run. Somebody's like, "Hey, I got this on videotape," which shows you how long ago it was. He goes,
Yeah.
"You ever seen the George C. Scott?" And I'm like, "George C. Scott as Scrooge? That's like
Yeah.
blasphemy. He's an American. You can't do that." And then I saw it, and I was like, "Okay, he's like the only American, and
Yeah.
he does a really good job." So
He is perfect. Like he is the embodiment of Ebenezer Scrooge.
when he says, "Well, if they would rather die, then perhaps they
Oh,
should do so and decrease the surplus population," because of the way he delivers it, you believe him.
yeah, and even the guy that played Alfred, I can't remember his name. He said,
Michael Goh,
yes, yeah. He says, "Oh, surely you don't mean that." He says, "With all my heart."
with
Now
all my
please
heart.
move
Now,
along.
please.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's so
Yes,
cold."
yes,
Yeah,
so cold. And then, okay, Patrick Stewart, he did a turn as Scrooge,
yeah.
and it's okay. It's not bad, but
It's a fine
I
job.
don't believe, he's a nasty guy.
Yeah,
But he's kind of averagely nasty, and when he's reclaimed, it's an average reclamation. When George
yeah.
C. Scott says it with such
Mm.
intent and with such meaning behind it, and then his heart is changed. It's a much, for me at least, it was a much bigger impact of this is somebody who's really changed because he
Oh
was
yeah.
so deplorable before and so casual about
Mhm.
how deplorable his attitude about it was. So
Yeah, and I gotta say, I mean, I've even written. I share this usually every Christmas time, but I wrote a blog entry about the horror genre and Christmas,
mhm,
and the highlight was A Christmas Carol,
mhm,
being a ghost story,
mhm,
and I think one of the most impactful scenes of not just that movie, but I would say um any movie dealing with Christian undertones.
mhm.
Um the most haunting scene in that movie is Jacob Marley.
Oh yeah.
When they are talking in Scrooge's,
Mhm,
bedroom. Because literally you when you realize that Jacob Marley in that scene is actually in hell.
mhm,
He is wandering the earth, chained, forced to see the things that he wished he could be a part of, but will never be able to be a part of.
mhm,
That it just I didn't really grasp that until I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I was like, wait a minute. It's like this is actually what is
mhm,
happening. And in that moment, in that scene, George C. Scott did such a good job. Like you could just see how he was wrestling with
mhm,
disbelief and fear all at this a fear of the fact that this is real
mhm.
all at the same time. It's just brilliant actor all around.
A great ensemble for that.
Oh, perfect
David
ensemble.
Warner. I mean,
Hmm.
you know, um, well, you always were a good man of business.
Yeah.
Mankind should have been my business. Charity, mercy, benevolence, all, our counting house was but a drop of water,
Oh,
the endless ocean of our business. And the thing too, where Edward Woodward as Christmas present
oh, he
makes
was amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, the line where he looks at Scrooge and he repeats, if he
well,
if they're to
if
die, then
no,
they
then let
should
him
die and
die.
decrease the surplus population. And he says
Perhaps I
you
did
should,
speak quickly of those things that I didn't give much
yeah, he said you
consideration. Well,
should you
then,
should be more careful of where the surplus population is and who it is, because it may be that in
in
the
the
sight
eyes
of
of heaven,
heaven you are more worthless than millions like this poor man's child.
you
And
are
the
more
way he
worthless.
delivers that,
Yes,
oh, So good. So good.
You are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this
Oh, just that
poor man's
emphasis.
child. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you know, look beneath my robes.
Oh,
These are your children. Want and ignorance.
greed. Ignorance, that's what it was.
Want and
Yeah.
ignorance.
Yeah.
So they're covered, but they live. Oh, they live. And they spell the doom of you and all like you. Yeah, that is, it is an underrated horror film. It really is.
Absolutely. It is a horror film. It's
Yeah.
a horror film that uses reality, it uses political views, it uses, ghosts
Hmm.
to tell a hopeful message,
Hmm.
and a warning to those that are like Scrooge.
Hmm.
Um but anyway, let's move on with some more comments. A lot of people are talking about different horror movies. Um and let's see. It says, now Rick says, "Oh great, now Clyde is promoting your Kickstarter."
You can
And
always promote your
Cindy,
friends.
indeed, yes, and Cindy's here, lurker mode. Hi,
Yes,
Cindy.
indeed.
And she says, "You have a fascinating schedule." Yes, I would agree with you, Clyde, or I would agree with her, Clyde. Sarah says she's got to go, but enjoy the show. Thank you, Sarah. Hopefully you catch the rest of it on the rerun. And hello, Jay Selly, my friend. How you doing, man? Excited for your new launch coming up. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to reread the first issue here soon. Um, and let's see. Rick says Sam Raimi is directing the next Doctor Strange movie. I forgot that. Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I'm excited. Cindy says, I'm not a fan of horror, but I don't mind ones that have more story than gore or graphic images. I've seen some really, really old ones like Nosferatu. Yeah, I lean towards, in my opinion, if it's a good horror movie, it means it has a good story. And that's honestly why I love The Conjuring so much. The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, the third one's okay. But both of those movies have such a compelling story because both movies are really about family. They're about family and they're about love conquering evil. And they show that very well with just, you know, highlighting the shadow sides of the shadowy ghoulish sides of that message of they use the demonic to highlight um the goodness that God created in family and in love. And I have huge respect for movies that can do that. I think James Wan is a genius in his storytelling. But all right, well, that's all the comments, Clyde. Let's go ahead and wrap up. One final question. I really wanna. I wanna. We're gonna have to have you back. I love it when we run out of time instead of run out of questions. That means it was
Okay.
a good episode. We only got through like 3 questions out of 6. So this final one. So what is your dream writing job? And in that, I mean, like, who would you want to work with? What situation would the perfect situation for writing for you?
Right. Well, actually, I'm kind of there because I didn't have to rely on it to make a living.
Hmm.
That could have been more satisfying in a lot of ways, but you also, would it have been enough? Like I said, the fellow that took the class from, he's been a writer this whole time. He's
Hmm.
turned out pretty well. Um, but I don't know, how I don't. I think he got married, but I don't know that he ever had any kids or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's lived what seems to be a fairly conservative existence. He has
Hmm.
been a journeyman writer, and he's done all right. But I don't know how he's set up for retirement. I don't know. Hopefully
Right.
he's gotten legal, or he's gotten uh, informed investment
Yeah.
uh, advice and stuff like that, so that he's parlayed that into a good retirement. But I don't know. I don't think I have the wherewithal to have done that. So again, I don't think I could have done it any other way, but having somebody that I can get together with on a weekly basis and review comic books and write the stuff for that, cool. I'm running a chill game right now for Halloween with a bunch of gamers, and cool. I love that. I can do that because I don't have a 9 to 5 job where I can. I took a day last week of my 5 days and I wrote on that the story that I'm running them on. It's an original story. So
Yeah.
you know, um, so a lot of it's been fulfilled. I'm making some money, doing some writing, being published. Um, I don't have to. I have editors that I have to answer to a little bit, but nothing has been like screaming of "Hey, we're gonna have this by tomorrow" or
Right. Yeah.
this last minute stuff. None of that. So it's very laid back. And after 30 years of having a job where, oh, this call is nothing. The next call could be complete and utter meltdown,
Yeah.
on the other end. And you never know when you go in. Those kind of jobs, you really appreciate the idea that I can kind of take this at my own pace. So I'm kind of living it. But if I could work with anybody else, it would be my comic book spectrum folks, Eric Hawkins, Brian Rodman. I would be happy to work with you on writing.
Which you everyone he is here
Yeah,
soon.
yeah.
So
I didn't know
that's gonna
whether
be
you want me
pretty
to say that, but yeah, we
No,
got,
yeah, we're
we got
fine.
that going. I've got 2 other projects with Stormgate Press that are not B-Man, so I've got that coming. I'm working on this book. I talked to you about it before, but I keep getting sidetracked with other things.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have not been pursuing it as much as I should, but I do. I'm still working on it, and it's like one of those projects, like 75% done. It's NaNoWriMo time coming up. Finish it. Finish it.
There you
I
go,
will
man.
sleep through it's hard. So somebody, and I got to thinking of comic book people that I don't know personally, but know a little bit. Nick Cagnetti,
Hmm.
he put out a book called Pink Lemonade. It is, and I don't know, he's one of those guys that he does everything for his book.
Yeah.
And professionals really, really liked it. I do get the feeling that he works very slow, perhaps. But it's one of the coolest comic book concepts. The sort of thing that is a very good story for young girls.
Mhm.
It harkens to a purer form of heroism while subjecting the hero to some pretty dark doings. But it's a very hopeful, very positive, very clean, almost it almost has his art style is almost primitive.
Hmm.
It's charmingly primitive. But I've wanted to see a Pink Lemonade cosplay show up at a theater or at a con, and then I would know he'd made it.
Yeah.
But he has such a vision. He's one of the people that came to mind when who would you like to work with that's a pro? I don't know if he really considers himself a pro, but that's somebody that I would think would be fun. He's just a font of creativity, and
Yeah.
I would like to. I think that would be kind of fun. But that's the only third person I could think of. I mean, there are some others I could think of, but I'm like, okay, Neil Adams is going to illustrate my story.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah.
Why don't I just let Brian write a story for that? So, but Nick
Oh,
Cagnetti
speaking of which, here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Brian has a question. Clyde, how does it feel to be carrying those other people on comic book spectrum, particularly alleged hosts with the fez?
Well, we talked about this before. You guys are creators, and so you have a perspective that I can fully appreciate, and it's different. I am a longtime consumer, and I learned a little bit about critiquing comics, but I don't have a master's in literature or anything like that, like some of my buddies over at Doom Rocket had. So I'm still the old guy that's just loved loved the different genres, and loved the medium of comic books for so long. That um, it's fun to read the new stuff. This is an exciting time to be a comic book fan,
Oh,
especially
yes, it
long-term
really is.
comic book fan. And I feel bad for people my age that are like, I'm just going to read the old stuff because all this new stuff's crap. Not true. Not true at all. So it's nice to be able to represent an earlier generation. But no, you guys bring your own perspective. I I'm glad that you like what I do, because I felt like I was a real come behind kid working with the Doom Rocket group. They were
Mm.
much more sophisticated. So I'm glad I could take the things I learned from them and apply it to our show. So
Well, I gotta say,
blessed to be able to do it.
I look forward to your reviews every single week, and even the weeks. I mean, even the weeks that I miss, you know, due to whatever reason, health or whatever. I have always gone back and I've listened to yours a couple times, just because it is very intentional. It's very thought. It's very thought out. Um, it's very well composed.
Thanks.
And I think, I mean, me, Eric, and Brian, we all kind of do ours on the fly. And I think that's fine too. I enjoy their reviews as well. I enjoy our show. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's just a good informative time for people to listen to about the show or about the comics and the comic book industry. But your reviews are top notch. I really do. I mean, we all say it all the time in the chat, but it is great. And Brian says, actually, Clyde is called our gold standard for a very good reason. Yes, you are
I think
correct.
Brian's our vibranium standard, though, because he knows so many people, and he
Oh
can
gosh,
put
yeah.
things into perspective. So he says the gold standard a lot, but I still think of him as the vibranium standard. And I'm glad that you like it, and I'm glad to be part of really getting together with your friends once a week, because we talk a lot besides just the show. Even the 3-hour shows, we talked before, we talked after. We get to visit.
We talk all throughout the week.
And this last year and a half, last 2 years actually, that has been a real godsend. And I mean that. It has been it has made a big difference in my week and my life to have that to look forward to. So thank you for letting me be part of it and to have that. Because I think we've all been through, for various reasons, besides just the pandemic and other things, we've all had a pretty rough couple of years. So when you can find something that you can look forward to in a week, and you latch onto it, and it grows, and people enjoy it, that's just, that's the whipped cream on top of the sundae. So with a cherry on top.
No, I agree with you 100%. I've said it many times. The Rising Tide Network kind of saved my butt last year mentally, and I'm so thankful to be able to just to be able to have this show and Comic Book Spectrum both every week is a godsend. I'm blessed to have two groups of friends that next week, ladies and gentlemen, will be colliding. That's right. Next Tuesday on the Dastardly Dingoes, we will actually be having a Dastardly Comic Book Spectrum next week. Same Dingoes time, same Dingoes channel. And one of them, he's the styrofoam standard. That's some imposter syndrome, I believe so, sir. You are definitely more than styrofoam. And I'm generally non-standard. Yes, exactly. Oh, that's great. Well, that's all for this time, guys. I'm really thank you so much, Clyde.
Thanks
Before we
for
head out, yeah, for sure, man. We're gonna have you back on after next week as well, just to hit some of these questions we didn't get to. And have you on for maybe a topical episode. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm really sad we didn't get into the library stuff. We will next time. We'll probably have an entire episode about it because I think it's important, and I think we need to really focus on that right now. What does that say? Let me get you the full screen.
Hey, if a guy in his 90s can take out time to be the spokesman for how important libraries are, we all can take another tip from Stan. He's given us a lot. We can take this along with it, how important libraries are. So
absolutely. Well, now that you have the full screen, why don't you tell us once again, Clyde, where we can find you and what you have coming up?
Okay. Right now, I am an independent author, and I am working with Stormgate Press. Right down there, www.stormgatepress.com. You can go and find a lot of things in the new pulp genre, along with other uh, various books and adventures. Most of them lean toward the new pulp, but there's also some horror in there. There's a lot of good selections. Charles F. Millhouse, Brian K. Morris, myself, Bobby Nash, and others have contributed, and there's also some great artwork. We have our Pulp Reality series that I am featured in, Pulp Reality #1. There's some of that good artwork that we were talking about on the cover. Pulp Reality #2, both available by going to www.stormgatepress.com or by checking us out on Amazon. If you do either one and you read our stuff, please leave a review. It helps. So we have that. I've got, I just turned in a completed story for a future. It's kind of a top secret, kind of an old time science fiction-y sort of story, but it's a collaboration with other writers for Stormgate Press. And next year, Charles F. Millhouse's original character, Captain Hawkland, will be celebrating his 10th anniversary. And I have been invited to write one of the Lost Captain Hawkland stories. So I get to participate in that with Charles Millhouse, letting me play in his sandbox a little bit more.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, very cool. And we also have Pulp Reality 3 and Pulp Reality 4 coming out. I think #3 is probably going to be out in time for Christmas. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's kind of the rough timeline. And then next year, Pulp Reality 4. And my B-Man stories will be in there. So check me out on Facebook under Clyde Hall, or under Radiating Positive Vibes with author Clyde Hall, also on Facebook, or over at Twitter at CJ Hall 1984. And you can also find me at Comic Book Spectrum on Thursday nights.
Thanks, Clyde. Hang out backstage for me, man. We'll catch up here in a minute. Thank you all once again for tuning into the Dastardly Dingoes podcast. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Also, hit that bell to get notified when an episode, or when we have a new episode. And as always, kids, have fun, be safe, and go to a library. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much. And let's see. Let's get on here. Cindy says, we are missing you already. Thank you for hosting the adventure. Thank you, Cindy. And thank you all very much. And we will see you next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Comic Book Spectrum, fellas. We're going to have a crossover episode. It's going to be a ton of fun. You don't want to miss it. Have a good night, everybody.